Welcome to the first of a 6-part video series on Modeling for Clarity, a workshop from the Understanding Group. I'm Joe Elmendorf. In this first video, I'll be guiding you through what models are and why modeling is a tool and practice worth your time. So one morning, years ago, I sat down for breakfast with my 18-month-old daughter, Eden, and she pointed up at some bananas that we had hanging, and she just said, "Nana, Nana." Foolishly, I thought she wanted to eat a banana. So I got a banana down and I started peeling it for her. But she just started screaming at the top of her lungs, which is just a horrible way to start the morning. So I stopped peeling the banana, but she was still pointing up at the bananas. And so I got another banana, and this time instead of peeling it, I just handed it to her. She grabbed it, held it up to her ear, and said, "Hello, Mimi?" She didn't have the words to say that she wanted to call her grandma, but she used what she had around her to express her intent, what she wanted, without words. This is what modeling is. She was modeling her intent with what she had. We've all been doing it since we were born. We're just now taking what we unconsciously do and have been doing in everyday life and naming it so that we can make more conscious frameworks for doing it better. So first off, what is a model? You may have heard this word before, and you certainly will hear it a lot in this workshop. So let's begin by clarifying what we mean here when we say model. When you hear the word model, you might be thinking about physical models. That if everybody's ever been to an architecture school or any architectural office, they have cool little models that show something of what the buildings might be. You might be thinking of mathematical models. I'm completely unqualified to speak about mathematical models, or maybe statistical models, but I'm also not qualified to speak about those. But that's okay, because those are not what we're talking about today. But there are both kinds of models. So some high-level concepts of modeling will still apply. We just won't focus on making those. Maybe you think of my favorite kind of model, the toy model. Things that you get to build and play with that represent something you might not otherwise get to have or build, but it harkens to a real object somewhere. In this workshop, whenever we're talking about models, we're talking about something that invites play. It's not something firm. It's not something set and permanent. There's an invitation to interact, to engage, and to participate. This is a really important distinction when we think about a model versus a map. A map is set. It tells us where things are and is reliable, referenceable. There's an authority to it. A model, on the other hand, is fluid. It invites discussion and questioning, and models are for play. A model can evolve to become a map, but they are very different things. You might have a map of your city. That map should be reliable. You don't want to be questioning if the map is right. You should be able to build a model on that map, maybe of how you and a friend might walk to the farmer's market. You and your friend might discuss the best ways to get there. Using this model, you might express your different perspectives through a couple of different models, but you aren't going to argue whether or not a street on that map exists or not. That isn't what maps are for. Models, on the other hand, are where the play, argument, and discourse happens. Models don't always have to be picture-based either. Believe it or not, a report or brief is a kind of model too. It's a model that uses words to express the relationship of things rather than pictures or tangible materials. Word-based models are good for different things than picture-based models. While models can be made of words, the focus of this workshop will be on models that include pictures or visuals to explore an aspect of reality. When we talk about models in this workshop, we're talking about pictures that are based on some aspect of reality for the sake of inviting discussion and play. Since we're dealing with pictures, it can be easy, even unconscious, to want to judge the effectiveness of the model based on whether or not we think it's a good-looking picture. However, models are not just pictures for picture's sake. They're pictures that are being used to make a rhetorical argument about the subject of the model. This is a model that a building architect might make to give a sense of what the feel of a building might be like. Yet, no one's going to expect that the real building will have giant loofahs on sticks outside. This disconnect from the real material, this abstraction for what we know is real, helps us understand that there's an argument being made about what can happen here, but nothing is set. It's okay that the picture isn't perfectly accurate. It's okay that the picture isn't pretty, polished, or attractive, because that's not what we're going for with models. A model is a tool that helps us to tell a story about reality, that helps us propose a way of seeing that is open to interpretation and that invites play and discussion. A model is not the end. It's a means to an end. Next, let's take some time talking about why we model. Since you are here, you must have a hunch that models are helpful. But why do we bother to make them? Well, there are many particular reasons for any situation, but here there are 6 high-level, generally applicable ways that models help us. Models help us work through ideas faster. They make the invisible visible. They show us the boundaries and contents of a system. Models help us document systems. They help us ask better questions. And models are molds for making other things. Let's dive into each of these a bit more. First, models help us work through ideas faster. The way they do that is through their use of pictures. Pictures help us learn. It's basically why whiteboards exist. Words are obviously wonderful, and we'll never be able to get away from them entirely. But we learn better when we're exposed to both words and pictures as ways to explain something. Models help us work through our ideas faster because, as the story of my daughter illustrates, we can often draw, act out, or otherwise model our thinking and understanding of something in a non-linguistic manner before we have the right words to express it accurately. It uses a different part of our brain, a more spatial understanding of how space, time, and relationships all work together. We can get things out of our heads sooner and more concisely with models than we can with writing or speaking. A goal of this workshop is to help you get to a place where you're comfortable with the process of modeling, so you can more freely let the ideas in your head be expressed via pictures. One of the ways pictures help us learn and process faster is by taking what's often invisible and making it visible. You all have knowledge in your heads, something that other people don't know but need to know. Maybe it's something that you can feel at a visceral level but can't express with words, or maybe it's not just in your head but in your body. Maybe you can express it, but you need to use your hands to explain it, to draw it out. Modeling is a way to get those ideas out of your head and your body so that you can see it. Because when you can see it, you can reflect on it and talk about it. When a group of people can see it, that group can talk about it and develop a shared understanding. There's a richness into pictures. They not only help us learn, they get us something earlier than words. But there's also a texture that you can't get with just words alone. Carl Jung, a pioneer in analytical psychology, is cited with saying, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And I feel like there's so much that just gets dismissed as being fate, or it's just bound to happen. There's so much about our society that's complex, and it just seems to happen because we can't see the complex dynamics. But it's just because we haven't figured it out yet. We don't understand it enough yet. We haven't been able to model it and wrap our minds around it enough where we can talk about it. But modeling helps us move past that. The third thing is that models help us to represent and understand the boundaries of something, as well as their inner workings and the parts of that thing. Models help us find the edges of a system or concept and where the relationships take place within those edges. A fun example of that is found on this page and most pages from books by Richard Scarry. They make visible for a child what is largely invisible to them about the way that the adult world works. This model shows what the edges of the electrical system are and the parts within. It shows how the parts work together. It shows the relationships between different parts. And this example is great because it shows us that our models don't have to be 100% accurate in every regard in order to convey truthful information about a system. Fourth, models are systems of documentation. They allow us to understand and keep track of vast amounts of information that would otherwise get lost. There's an interlock that happens when we document the connections and relationships. When we're learning about something new, we need to keep track of what we learn, and we can only make sense of something in terms of something that we already understand, which makes documenting knowledge an act of unfolding. This property of models makes them excellent tools to aid in an iterative discovery process. You learn something new, and then you model how that new learning fits in with other things that you already know. And then you repeat that process over and over again. Fifth, when we have a model that is documenting our understanding of something, it isn't just a repository of understanding. It also provides feedback about gaps and holes in our understanding, places where relationships aren't yet clear or grounded with confident connections to the rest of the model. As a discovery tool, models not only help us keep track, but they help to guide our inquiry. Models naturally can have gaps, but the nature of a visual modeling medium is that they call out where they are incomplete and beg to be fulfilled. They help reveal what we need to learn next by making new frameworks from which we can see to ask new questions. Lastly, when we make relationships in models, we are defining constructs. These constructs are molds that we get to use when it comes time to create the actual thing. When you want to replicate something efficiently and accurately, you use molds. Have you ever seen someone make a mold of something? It often starts with the artist or craftsperson forming a soft medium, clay, plaster, wood, until they reach a state that's good. But soft molds aren't durable, and they won't create accurate replicas. The soft molding medium needs to be converted into a hard, durable molding material. It gets cast or baked or recreated to transform the soft, play-inviting medium into a hard, reliable one. This is the same thing that happens with modeling. We use flexible, play-inviting mediums that can easily be changed and adapted to figure out what we want something to be. And then when we're done, we transform that flexible medium into a more durable one that can be used for making. Earlier, I referred to this kind of thing as a map. In addition to models being molds for making things, models are also molds for making understanding in people's heads. When we create complex digital worlds, we need to replicate understanding amongst everyone involved. And we need that understanding to be accurate and reliable. If everyone has a different vision in their heads of what is being built, there's a large risk of misalignment and misunderstandings. Iconic architect Frank Lloyd Wright said, "You can use an eraser on the drafting table or a sledgehammer on the construction site." I know that I'd much rather use an eraser than a sledgehammer to make a bunch of changes, and so would the people paying for whatever I'm making. Okay, so if it's such a great tool, why doesn't everybody do it already? If the goal is to make a building and we're playing around with these little bits of cardboard for ground elevation and walls and sprinkling on sawdust and sticking loofahs in the ground as trees, what good is that? If the goal is to make an app and we're spending our time drawing circles and diagrams and futzing with labels, what good is that? Why waste our time? Let's just get to the building already. You might say, surely actually making something, even if it's not completely correct, is better and more efficient than all this thinking about making, right? Well, it's not more efficient, and don't call me Shirley. Over the years of teaching modeling and explaining my rationale to clients, I've heard a variety of pushback about why there isn't enough time to model. Until you get into a habitual practice of modeling as the first step in making, you will undoubtedly run up against these nagging internal and sometimes external thoughts. I don't have time for this. It's an extra step, or this isn't really my job. I'm supposed to be doing something else, or I'm too overwhelmed with all that I need to do. I don't have time for this. I'm going to argue that all of these are invalid because modeling helps you save time by avoiding costly rework. If your job is to make sense of the world and make things clear, modeling is the most efficient way to do that. One reason you might feel overwhelmed today is because you're not modeling. In truth, your deadlines are too close to not model, and you have too much stuff to do. And the things that we're working on, they're invisible relationships and information, they're too important to mess up or give a half-hearted effort to. Perhaps there's one additional reason, the most human reason of all. Doing something that you're unfamiliar with is uncomfortable. If you've not spent much time creating models or you've never shown your models to other people, it can be frightening to start. Another goal of this workshop is to provide a safe space for you to get used to modeling and get practice working through the discomfort so that you can come out the other side ready to apply this tool in your work. If you're taking this course, you are more than likely responsible in some way or another for shaping the world we live in. I know that I am in the work I do for clients. And if we don't put the right amount of time and care into what we're doing, if we don't make proper sense of the relationships and connections we're working with, we can really mess up a lot of stuff. So the things that we're working on are too important for us to not take the time to model. I'm really glad that you've decided to join us for this workshop. It'll be better because you're here. See you next time.